the 4 C's of life: culture, conflict, commerce, and conservation. So today we are continuing in our month of November discussions about Nanowrimo. And Nanowrimo is National Novel Writing Month, so I thought I would dedicate this month to all things authorship marketing, book marketing, and publishing. And so we've already discussed the beginner basics of what you need to do as a good storyteller. So you should already be starting that. If you have not, please buy my book. This is going to be critical. Trust me, you need to buy the book because this will help you with your storytelling as far as it involves common fictional character types and the hidden messages that they carry, so that you're not wasting words, wasting time, trying to reinvent the wheel, and basically ticking off readers because you misapplied that inherent knowledge that readers already have and basically called into question everything that they know. So, moving forward from there, we went a little bit into book marketing. I talked about the aspects of book marketing before you even write and the reason for that. And so that is something that you need to know. You need to be planning ahead before you write. You need to write intentionally. And that means you need to market intentionally. And a lot of authors, that concept evades them at every step of the way. And we did a little specialty piece where I did some corn husk dolls. That had nothing to do with writing, but because it's National Native American Month, we did some corn husk dolls. So what I'm going to do here, I am going to do a contest. And so in this contest, I'm just going to pull up my calendar real quick and see what we got going on. But basically what you do is you make a comment below to enter. So you can just put your name, say, please enter me, whatever. And that's just to get comments under this episode only. And so this episode, it's going to be the week before Thanksgiving. So I will give until the 21st. And on the 21st, I will announce the winner. And that is how we're going to do it, because Thanksgiving is always the 4th Thursday. Only U.S. Entries will apply, because I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pay for the shipping. That's normally in most contests you have to pay for the shipping. I'm going to go ahead and pay the shipping for you. So you just have to enter, put your name in, say please enter me, something like that with your name, and then I'll announce. So I do these shows ahead of time. On the 21st, I will actually make the episode that will be for that week, and I will announce then. So I'm doing things a little different just for this contest, and we'll go into the last elements of the story process. And that, I think what we'll do is we'll talk about publishing book awards and things of that nature in that episode. But don't hold me to it, please. So let's talk about editing. And editing is critical to being a good author, and it is critical to book sales. The number one reason why a reader will put down a book and give a negative review is because the characters are bad. So that is the reason why I wrote this book. This right here will stop most of your bad reviews if you pay attention to what it says. It will put down a lot of the issues where readers stop reading. So this one book right here will get you going where you need to go. So I'm going to stop for no, I'm not going to stop. That I thought I heard rain outside. I have my dogs outside, but it is somebody with a weed eater. I apologize. As I said, these are very informal, so you get to hear everything. So if you ever hear a dog bark or whatever, it's my life. You're going to hear it, and I'm not doing the fancy edit cuts that you normally see. But getting back to it, the first one, character types. That's important. And if you can get my book, that's going to solve the majority of your issues that you have with readers, because that is their biggest complaint. So if you can cut that out, your scores are going to go up, your sales are going to go up, and your readership engagement is going to go up, because readers will forgive a lot of stuff, but they will not forgive improper character usage. And that's psychological. So if something in that brain, remember we talked about how there's a filter mechanism, and you unlock it and you circumvent and go to a different part of the brain through storytelling. And if that character does not resonate with what Jung called the collective consciousness, then that part of the brain is going to become engaged again. And when it becomes engaged, that sense of fantasy, that part of your brain that you're using to put in those hidden messages of allegory, goes away. And all of a sudden it's back in here and it's pushing you out. And that's when they put down the book. So there is a psychology to this. The next issue is plot lines, plots, plot twists, and also story hooks. And I'm not going to say story arcs, because that's where you got more than one book. But if you got people engaged and they're already buying one book, you need to have what they call a story arc. And that is where it's an overall plot line for your series of books. And I always tell people, write trilogies if you're going to do multiple books. Unless you're doing something like a children's book where you're doing a series, but they're not really related. You know, I have a few authors that I know that they have a central character, or they have a central theme, but the stories are not related. And so therefore you don't really need a story arc. That's really not needed, because it's just basically kind of like a comic strip. You're always, I remember High and Lois. I remember the Peanuts when I was growing up, Snuffy Smith, all those weekly and daily comic characters you'd see in the papers. There was never any type of overall story arc with them. Same thing with these types of books. But if you got a epic story that you're telling, an epic romance, an epic anything, and you're going to be writing multiple books, readers tend to only read up to 3 and then they stop. That is the reason why you see trilogies more than you see 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books in a series. That is an intentional series with a developed story arc, because the readers kind of get bored with it. And so a lot of authors, they get so enamored with their stories that they don't think about the readers. So definitely know about plots, know about plot lines, know about a story hook, something to keep them interested, know about a plot twist, something to make them, oh, I was thinking this way. I thought I had everything figured out. I don't. I guess I need to trust this author. So it builds trust, and it kind of keeps the reader on their toes because things aren't what they thought it was. So throw that in there. I don't like a lot of plot twists. I read for fun, and I know some authors that there is a plot twist in every chapter. And as a male reader, you have more reading disabilities with men, and more if they're of ethnicity. So like Native American heritage, you're going to find men with reading disabilities. I have a reading disability, so I can't stand a plot twist done every single chapter. It becomes cumbersome because the act of reading is not really that enjoyable for me. It takes me about 4 times the average person to read something. And so it's very difficult for me, and there's a lot of guys out there with these issues. Some of them are undiagnosed, some are diagnosed, but even if they're diagnosed, there's not much being done about it. And there's not that many resources that we can go to get help. And it's travesty, but it is what it is. And so I bring that up, that if you're writing for women, you may want to put in more plot twists, but if you have a male audience, I would strongly suggest limiting the number of plot twists, because male readers tend to not like it. Also, if you're dealing with ethnicities, a high ethnic environment, women not so much, but definitely men, be aware of that. That is something that you need to worry about in your marketing plan. When you're worried about your targeted reader, you need to make sure that you're accommodating. So the second reason that we talked about was plots, plot lines, plot twists, story arcs, if you're writing a trilogy. And so if you don't have that in place, your readers are going to leave you. And so that is the number 2 reason. I'm working on a book on plots and plot lines and plot twists, and that will be coming out later. It's already written. It's already got some beta reads in, and it's just a matter that the market right now is not there for it. When the market changes due to COVID, then I will be publishing a number of books, but right now it's just in the back burner. Then we get to our episode for today, and we're talking about edits. And so you need to know what edits are, the type of edits, why, proofing, things of that nature. So the first one that most people never deal with, because they're not going to be dealing with a literary agent. They've already decided not to waste their time with that route. If you ever try to get a literary agent, I will tell you now that it can take up to 3 years to get a literary agent. And a lot of newbie authors think that it's going to be easy, and they go through this process. And I've had a number of published authors tell me that after they got through with literary agents, that they still got passed off to mid-range or small presses, small publishing houses. So just because you think you're going to get with Simon & Schuster, Penguin Books, some of the bigger ones, or their imprints, you're probably not. That is the old school traditional publishing, and they only have so many slots. They see publishing from a different perspective, and so they're not going to waste money on something that's a gamble. And ironically, what they're doing now is they're letting a lot of these indie authors make the mistakes and suffer the costs. And so when an indie author gets to a certain level of success, then they will hire them on, they will take on their books and do the publishing contract. So that is something to understand, that even if you get a literary agent, more than likely you're not going to get the results you're looking for. I know a lot of literary agents are now screaming at this video. You know it's true. That's all I'm going to say about that. You know what I'm saying is true. I'm not telling people not to use literary agents, but I am giving them forewarning. So if you're going to be dealing with a literary agent, you're dealing with a publisher. Most indie authors have no understanding of edits. They don't realize that there's multiple edits. They don't know what those edits do. They have no concept whatsoever. And if they're a self-publisher, it shows. It really shows. If you're with an indie publishing house, it can show. It really depends on the indie publisher and how much they really understand about their business. And just as being an author, there is no vetting really to stop you from being an author. There is no bar, there's no test, there's no regulation of any type for aptitude and acumen. The same thing is true for publishers. Anybody can hang out, the old term, hang out a shingle. So anybody can hang out a shingle as a publisher. It doesn't mean that they know what they're doing. So in these cases, you need to be very careful. Look at some of their published books before you even approach them. You need to make sure that they're publishing in your genre, because as we talked about earlier, if they're not publishing in your genre, then they're probably not the right fit for you. If they do kind of a little bit of everything, they still may not be the right publisher for you. You may not see the benefits that you're looking for. If you're in something that is specialized, try to find a publisher that specializes in that field. And so when I was talking about, those 200 or more rejections, a lot of it is because wrong fit. So make sure you're talking with somebody with the right fit. Then look at their books and make sure that they look right. If they don't look right, then they're the wrong publisher. So you could still have, let's say it's religious, because this happens more with religious stuff than not. I have a deep-seated distrust for anybody that makes their business off their faith. So if your faith is how you make your money, it is very hard for me to trust you. I have to really get to know you, and there has to be a reason why you're doing what you're doing. And a lot of people use their faith as a hook to get buyers and sellers. Because there's people that they'll only read a book if it's a Christian book from a Christian publisher. Because they have this dogmatic belief that unless it's Christian, I can't read it. So there's readers like that, and there's a lot of them. I've met them multiple times at book fairs and book events. It is annoying, and they ask. They look over, and that's one of the things they care about. And I realize those will never be my readers, and I thank them and send them on their merry way to somebody that maybe can help them. But you have a lot of people that they get into markets. They sell building supplies or whatever, and they're professing their faith as a Christian-owned business to try to get you to buy. It becomes a business concept rather than one of faith. And so I distrust those people intently. And you have those publishers out there that you have people that I'm going to make a killing off of being a Christian or saying that I'm a Christian, and I'm going to make money off of it. And there's really no purpose behind it other than I want to give opportunities to myself to sell these books. And if I have Christian authors, then that's all the better. It just reaffirms what I'm doing. But they have no acumen about what they're actually doing. And they're actually some of the worst offenders. There's others in the secular realm, sci-fi, YA, anything that's big, anything that has a dedicated buyer group, you're going to find those con artists. I know I sound like I pick on religion a lot because there's a lot of offenders there, but there's offenders everywhere. And so it tends to be wherever there is a specialty market that you can make money at, big money. And so that's where they're tapping into. They see those dollar signs and they feel that they have no need to actually know what they're doing. So as an author, you need to know what metadata is. If you don't know what metadata is, it's incumbent upon you to learn. You need to know industry standards for book formatting. You need to know what's on a copyright page. So most of the stuff authors do not know. And when I do consulting for authors, a lot of them, it's like I'm talking Greek to them. They're just like, what are you saying? Well, this is stuff that you should have known. You're a business person. Remember, we talked about the 4 C's. Commerce is one. So good commerce is based upon you knowing your business. And that means you need to know what a good published book must contain, what the industry standards are for publishing. And if you don't, you need to learn. That's all I'll say about that. You need to learn. So look at these publishers and make sure that they're conforming to industry standards. Pull up the metadata. There's ways that you can do that. And look it up and make sure that they are doing their job right and they're best positioning their books. And if you got a good publisher, a specialty publisher for your field that is doing their job right, then seek those publishers out. So out of thousands, you're now maybe looking at a few hundred. And out of those few hundred, you'll probably get a couple of hundred rejections because, again, they're going to do a marketing plan and they need to make sure your story fits. And then from there, they'll take you on. And I remember this author, she writes for the National Geographic, and they have a children's book series. And she kept being rejected by them, and she wanted them to publish her works. One of the things that she did was what we're going to talk about now, a developmental edit, which most authors do not do. So some publishing houses will have what they call a house style for formatting. And that house style is what they will use to take manuscripts that are solicited. Remember, never send an unsolicited manuscript to a publisher. And if they require an agent, then you've got to go through an agent. I avoid those just because I avoid those. But if you want to do the agent route, go ahead. Then either before or after you'll go through a developmental edit. In this case, this author did a developmental edit beforehand because she realized something about those rejections. They were not saying that her content, as far as the actual data she was putting in, was wrong. But the way they worded it led her to believe that maybe it was the formatting. And so she actually grabbed a few of those books and formatted her book manuscript, because we call them manuscripts until they're published, then they're books. So she took her book manuscript and formatted it like their books and submitted it. And the editor called her and said, "You're learning." And so they gave her a contract. Now she writes all the time for them. So a developmental edit can look a number of ways. Sometimes it is done before you submit to an agent or a publisher, and sometimes it is done after. Most authors, we do not say we, I'm using that in a general term. So most writers and authors, we do not realize there's multiple edits. And so we think a grammatical edit, which is like what you get with Grammarly or what your high school teacher did or what your college English professor did, that is editing. It is not. And so editors, good editors, and they're like agents and publishers and anything else in life. There's a lot of junk ones out there, and then you've got some good ones. And they have standards and guidelines that they have to go by, just as authors and publishers have standards and guidelines that we should go by. And so it becomes very difficult to find a good editor. And then when you get with an editor, you've got different types. And a book may go through 2, 3, 4 different types of edit, plus a proofing. So, and those edits can run from a few $100s to a few $1,000s. And a lot of indie publishers and a lot of indie authors that are, again, I use the term amateur a lot, but it applies. They say, wait a minute, I only paid a few dollars. Well, you're talking thousands. Yes, I am talking thousands, because I'm using a real editor, not somebody from Bangladesh that says, okay, I'll edit, and they're giving you something that really may be just a grammatical. So the first one is the developmental edit. And you need to know what a developmental edit is. Sometimes it will be called a structural edit. So that is critical that you understand. If they say structural edit, they may be talking about developmental edit. And in the larger publishing houses, you may have multiple developmental or structural editors. And each one will do something totally different. So you're like, what in the world are they doing? All I'm doing now is editing. Well, yeah, you are, and you're going to be, and you better hold on, and I hope you like it. Nobody likes it, so you just get over it, and they're going to rip your book apart. And so one may look at the actual way the genre demands a book to be written, because each genre has demands. And there's standards for genres. And so this is where that cross-genre thing, you don't see that a lot with the big ones, because there's no standards, or then you have to look at the marketing plan. And then it's like, okay, how are we going to approach this? So you may not see it if it's a cross-genre. But then again, you may be dealing with a publisher that specializes in cross-genre, and they have something figured out that they do that is not necessarily with industry standards, but is their house standards. And that editor is specially trained by that publisher to meet those house standards. So you'll go through that. And then there may be another one that it's looking at how to take your story and strengthen it. You got some weak areas. You got some areas that need development. You need to do a bunch of different stuff. And so they'll do that. And then there'll be another one that's about marketability. And so they'll say, take this out because we can't sell it if it has this content. Add this. Remember, I was talking about your marketing plan and including that in there? That's what these editors do. It's still a developmental edit, but it's a highly specialized subcategory. So even though we're using one umbrella term or actually umbrella category, it's not a term, it's a category of a larger term. This category will have subcategories. And so you have some that they just do marketing. In another category, I'm actually going to merge two. For a long time, you had what was called line editing, and then you had copyright or copy editing. And over the years, copy editors were transposed with line editors to the point that a lot of copy editors now include line edits into their work. It's just the fact that there's so many rank amateurs coming into the field that they don't just specialize in copy editing anymore. In the big publishing houses, you'll see copy edits and you'll see line editors. And if you talk with editor, they'll probably be screaming at this cast saying, "Oh, you're conflating them. They're two separate things." Yes, I know. And if you specialize in it, the only thing I'll say is that you need to make sure that people know, because as you will attest to, the market is conflating the two, and most editors in your field are now doing both and calling it copy editing. So if you're doing like the old school line editing, and then you got no one that you're just doing true copy editing, you need to make sure that publishers and authors know that, because if it's not spelled out, they'll think that the two have been conflated, and that's what you're talking about. So a line edit is very similar to what we call grammatical edits. They'll look at not only the grammar and things of that nature, but they'll look at the passive voice. They'll look at some of that other. And so then you get to copy editing, and they'll look at readability and things of that nature. So they've been conflated now. And so now most copy editors, they're going to be looking at whether or not you're using passive voice. Did you have any spelling errors? Is your sentence too complex? Are you using punctuation that is not consistent throughout? Do you need to develop a story a little bit better because it's just not strongly worded, or not the story itself? You need more description. So they will actually do all this stuff, and now they're calling it copy editing instead of just the cleaning up that you used to see with line edits, and then the further development that copy editing gave once you had a clean manuscript. Another one that people talk about is mechanical editing. And so mechanical editing is highly specialized. This is something that if you're dealing with a very technical field, you may deal with a mechanical editor. For instance, I know some authors that they write textbooks. I'm quite sure their publisher makes them go through mechanical edits. When I was publishing my book on restorative justice and conflict in the school system, my publisher had me do a mechanical edit because I was dealing with the school system. And so there were standards and requirements the school system had that enforced a certain standard, just as in a college would have certain requirements for a history book or whatever. So the mechanical edits make sure that your citing is correct. So I use APA style when I cite my technical books. And so they'll look through it, make sure that I am conforming with the academic standards and that my citing is on point. They will make sure that all educational standards are on point. So if you're writing a manual on becoming a airplane pilot, because there's all these different classes, and you might have one out for sport class aircraft, which I'm interested in becoming a pilot one day. Something I've never been able to do, I want to do. I like ultralights, I like sport craft. I like the idea of sport craft because you won't kill yourself like with an ultralight. So there's government standards for sport craft instruction. You might want to hire a mechanical editor, especially if you're going to be self-publishing this book, to make sure that you have the vetting, that you are looking at everything, not just yourself, but also through a professional, that they're going to be looking at it not for spelling errors, not for sentence structure, not for all the grammatical issues. They're looking to make sure that when you cite a certain standard, that is the current standard, that you're not taking that standard and misappropriating it, mistranslating it, whatever, that it is true and it is what it really is, and you're meeting all the requirements that would be needed. Same thing might be for religious studies. Now, I don't see this a lot, but I think it would be incumbent upon somebody that, let's say you're doing a book for pastoral studies or for somebody that's wanting to get a ministry started. It might be worth it, especially for your denomination or your category of faith, that you have a mechanical edit done so that you meet those criteria, so that if there is a certain doctrine that your faith requires, that you're meeting all that and everybody knows, okay, I still got to do this if my faith is going to be funding me and I'm going to be representing my denomination. These are things I need to do, versus somebody that is maybe doing on their own. You may be doing there may be international standards, and you do a mechanical edit for that, saying, okay, these are we're part of an overall group of missionaries, and I'm writing this book about missionaries, and so I am going to do it to conform to these guidelines in these countries, and I'm going to have somebody that maybe is a missionary that is renowned for regulation to do this mechanical edit to make sure that I've got everything that I need to do so I can sell it as an instructional book. Then that is something that you would do. Sometimes publishers pay this. Sometimes they don't. It depends. Most times publishers pay for most of these edits, but in the case of like the National Geographic with the developmental edit, the girl had to do that first in order to get published and get the contract. So you have to realize sometimes you will pay money for edits, and then you sometimes will have the publisher. And if you're self-published, of course, you will pay all this. So there's other types of edits. And I am finding more and more that there's a lot of people that are immigrants, and they're wanting to write books because their culture sees books as being important. And so they come from a country where people read books, whereas we have a culture where book readership is declining. I've said it numerous times. Book readership has plummeted by over half, and book readership tastes have changed so that not quite, but almost 3/4 of all the readers of books are going to be nonfiction books. So, unfortunately, a lot of these immigrant authors, first generation American authors, first generation British authors, anything first generation non-native English speaking author, they need to have a special edit done by a native English speaker that is proficient in English and they know English standards. So maybe an English teacher to do an edit just to make sure that the English that they're using conforms to what we as native English speakers would think is normal. So I make fun of a lot of these Chinese videos that you see. So they will have funny ways of wording stuff. And it, like for instance, there was a cooking show, Taste of China or something like that, and they was talking about they will give you the taste of most pleasing pleasure. It's goofy. I don't blame them for the fact that they don't know English. I blame them for the fact they had a non-English speaker, a non-native English speaker translate, and so they came up with goofy English that would sound funny to somebody that's used to English as we understand it. And so the words may be wrong. Sometimes somebody will say said I instead of I said. So it sounds like old school English, like the medieval Renaissance fair type English. And so they don't realize, because they're non-native English speakers and maybe their English isn't that great, that what they're writing it comes across as goofy. And they don't want that, and I wouldn't want that for them. And a lot of them are trying to do it on the cheap. And that's the worst thing that you can do, is try to do anything on the cheap, because not only do you get what you paid for, but you're going to lose readers. And they wonder why their sales are bad, because the readers are laughing at them instead of reading their stories, because it's just goofy. So in those cases, you'll want to do a language edit. Another thing that I see a lot, even though like my books are sold all over the world, there are authors that they know that their marketing plan is going to be for a set country. And so even though their books may be for all over the world, they will be marketing in another country. I'm going to be doing that with one of my Christmas books, one of my versions. I'll actually be marketing in Iceland. And so I'm going to have translations by Icelandic native speakers, and then edits by native speakers of Icelandic. So that way my book will be as best positioned as I can do to reach the Icelandic community. If you're going to be American and marketing over in Great Britain, they use terms that we do not use. So what they call a biscuit is what we call a cookie. What we call fries, they call chips. What we call chips, they call crisps. And then there's variations in spelling and the English. So whereas we use the word color, O-R, they write it C-O-L-O-U-R. So anything O-R is O-U-R. And where we might say something about sympathize and we use a Z, they will use an S, and things of that nature. There's all these different ways that they change how they write because the pond, as they call it, has created a barrier and their English has developed, just as the war northern aggression or northern aggression, what the Yankees refer to as Civil War. Nothing about was civil. But that Civil War created a rift between the North and South, and so Southern English is drastically different from Northern English. And so even then, sometimes I will have somebody that they say, I'm a Yankee, I'm a Northerner, and I am writing for Southerners. Well, then you need a language edit. You need somebody that understands the various different types of Southern language and their distinct differences based on the states, because the whole purpose of the war northern aggression was state rights. And so the states matter more in Southern culture than the United States do. And so, like people that it's hard for them to believe, but if you're a native Floridian, we believe that you can never be a citizen of this country. If you have children in the state, they're born in this state, they can become citizens, but you will never be treated as a citizen because you just do not understand the culture and you're a foreigner to us. But we will treat you with dignity and respect, and we won't tell you that, but if you ever ask us and you find a native Floridian, it's true. And it seems to be consistent. And what's funny is even in Florida, because we're so big, you will see people that are native Floridians of South Florida, which are very rare, native Floridians in Central Florida, which again are very rare, and then you've got Northern Floridians, and we see each other as totally different. We would actually favor breaking the state up into 5 distinct locations because we know those distinct locations. And our Southern, our culture, everything is so different. We think the state should be broken up into 5 separate groups. So if you're going to be writing to Southerners and you're trying to use Southern language, you need to know, okay, I'm going to be mostly marketing to Texas. You need to find somebody from Texas that is doing edits based on that. You need to find a culturalist with a strong English or publishing background and market to Texas. And again, there's Texas by law, if they ever decided to, they could break up into multiple states. So they even see things like Floridians, and you find that common in the South. So you may find that your edits are going to be very, very general unless you got a specified city that you're going to be marketing to. I'm going to be mostly marketing to Dallas. I'm going to be mostly marketing to Fort Worth. Then that guy needs to be, or that lady needs to be from that area. Because then you can really hone in on that area. Otherwise, it'll be more general. Most people never do Southern because it's just so dynamic. So they just write general and then let that be. But especially if you're going to be marketing specifically overseas to another country, even if it is England, even if it is New Zealand, places where they speak English, their English is not going to be the same. It needs to be formatted for that if you're going to be marketing solely to that market. If not, and you happen to have your books for sale there, no need to do it. I don't do it. It's not worth it. But this is talking about intentional marketing. Another thing is what I call content edits. Content edits, it is, even though you have copy editing, and copy editing will do a lot of this, this is more of a refined edit that I use. and they deal with making sure that you're not repeating what you've already said in another chapter and it's getting boring, and that you're not negating what you said beforehand. And so they look at that specifically. So it is almost a subcategory of copy editing, line editing, but it is more. It is something totally different now, and most people don't know about it. They don't do it, but I have done that. I like them, and I highly recommend them. Then there's all sorts of specialty edits. And so this is where somebody like me comes in. So I do edits based off of archetypes and allegory. So I will go in and make sure that your characters are properly used. That I'm not looking just at the genre, but are your vampires? Are your werewolves? Is your Akari character? Your bear cat? Your mermaid? Your shapeshifter? Are they conforming to known standards in Jungian psychology? And are you properly using the allegory? And if you're not, I'm going to ding you on it. And so I'm not going to be researching out and looking for your spelling errors. What I normally demand is that there's at least a grammatical edit done. And if you're a non-native English speaker, that you've had a language edit done before I even look at it. And then I will go through and I will look at it and make sure that your character meets the demands of the archetype you're portraying, and that you're properly using the archetypes. Another type of edit that I will do is called a cultural edit. And so there, I will actually look and make sure that what you're writing about meets the culture. And so I get calls from people, and sometimes it's not publishing. Sometimes it's because I'm dealing with conflict. And I study culture, so people will call me up. What do you know about the Micronesian community? What do you know about the Hmong community? And so there's people that they specialize in certain cultures, and then you have me that are generalists that we specialize in multiple cultures. And if I don't know, I know the resources where I can learn very quickly, better than somebody on their own. And so what will happen, they'll come to me and they'll say, I'm writing about Islamic community in America, because there's actually a huge Islamic community in Michigan. It's the biggest Islamic community in Michigan, and their culture is totally different than anywhere else in the state, and theirs is totally different than Muslims you may find in Jordan, in Saudi Arabia, in Bangladesh, Pakistan, or any of these other countries. Because even in these countries, there are different flavors based off of their religion, their laws, their dogma, their conflict that they've had, all these different issues. And so they may come to me and say, I am writing about this culture. I need you to do a cultural edit. Can you do it? And I will either say yes or no. If I have to do some research, I'll put that as full disclaimer and say I'm going to have to do some research. Let me get back with you before I make a definitive answer. I need to make sure that I'm competent enough that I can do this. That's something I try to do to be ethical. So I will deny work just because you need somebody more specialized. And I'm not going to take your money and say, oh, yeah, and do it unless I know I can. That may be Native American culture. And I actually had some authors that they came to me about that. And they're trying to do a Native American book. And so one of the things that they did not understand is that there's different categories of Native Americans. And so one of the things we narrowed it down that we're going to be talking about Southeastern Woodlands tribes, because they didn't know that there's all these different categories. And so you got Plains Indians, you got Northeastern Indians, you got all these different groups. But even then, you have variations based upon the tribes. So like most people do not realize that the state of Alabama actually comes from a tribe that was the Alabama people. And so actually Alabama, but it got shortened to Alabama and then Alabama. So most people, they don't even realize that's a tribe. It's just a funky name for a state. They don't realize it. Kind of like Tennessee, most people do not realize it originally was called Franklin. And then they took a Cherokee word, Tanasi. Tanasi was a concept. It was a creek or river bend. And we would camp in that bend because it was very easy to defend. We could send the children and women either upstream or downstream as we needed to put them to safety. And then the men, the warriors, go elsewhere and fight off the invaders that's coming in. So we would camp around a Tanasi. And so then that became Tennessee. And so most people don't even know what that state's name is about. That's where that comes from. And so if you get Cherokee, Creek, Choctaw together, we will see our differences very quickly that others would not know about. Sometimes the differences are very similar and not enough to really worry about. For instance, one of the ways that to properly say thank you in Cherokee is wado. Wado. This is very proper speaking. That is the way that the ones out in Oklahoma speak. However, if you're from the eastern side, and like Florida and places where the Cherokee ran and hid, we say a more informal version, ski, S-G-I, ski. So sometimes people, if I'm speaking proper, I'll say wado. Or if I'm with a mixed company, I'll say wado. But otherwise, I'll say ski. And that, especially if I'm talking to another Cherokee, I'll say ski. The Creeks will say mado. So there is very little difference between mado and wado. Why is that there? Because we were very close to each other as far as our territories. And so some of the words that were most commonly used, like thank you, we merged. They actually have a different word that they use when done in the informal. And so that you'll see the similarities, but then the differences from there are dramatic. And so our language is totally different. I can listen to somebody that is Creek, and a lot of them speak a form of Creek called Muskogean. They refer to themselves as Creeks. What most people do not realize is that the Creeks are really a fabricated tribe. They came into being after European conflict. It was where a bunch of similar tribes started to break apart and absorb into one that was known as the Creek Confederacy. And they're called the Creek Indians because of the Europeans. And so that's because they camped around the creeks. And so they call them those Creek Indians. And that's where you get the term Lord willing and the creeks don't rise. It is not talking about water. It is talking about the Native Americans that the Europeans or the Onega referred to as creep. So a book about a Cherokee person would be drastically different than somebody that was of Muskogee heritage. And even though we consider Seminoles and Miccosukee to be of the Creek Confederacy, a Seminole and a Miccosukee are drastically different. You would think that they're not, but they are. And they can see the differences. They can see similarities just as I can with difference between a Cherokee and a Creek, or a Cherokee and a Choctaw. So I have people that they come to me for cultural edits. You may have something else that is a specialty that, as I talked about, we talked about mechanical edits. Maybe it's that you're doing something theologically based and you're doing counseling and you've already been through the mechanical edit, but now you want to make sure that the doctrine is sound. You've done all the conformities that you need to do, but you just want to make sure that you're doctrinally sound, that you're giving them good advice based upon contemporary Christian culture. It may not be somebody in your denomination that does the edit. It may be somebody else that is a specialist in Christian counseling that they're going to be looking at it. Or maybe it's a preacher that you find to have really good roots in the doctrine. You may do it that way. It may be that you're a hunter. So I have a book that I'm working on about hunting, because another issue I talk about is conservation. Well, you might have somebody that they are a hunter, that they're going to be looking at the elements of conservation. And so they may be looking at it from, are you espousing something that might be dangerous? Are you espousing something that might run contrary to the culture of hunters? Which is true in my book. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to keep those elements. I know I am. But I might have to revise based upon those edits I get in from a specialist. And I may need to further develop to say, here's where people say this is where they're all in agreement, this has been historical, this is why I gravitate towards this. And I feel I've already done that, but that impartial third-party reader that is being paid to do it under those strict confines, they're going to test things. They're going to look at it from somebody that will be a reader. So that is something that you need to understand. Now, proofing is something that you need to know only if you're going to be really self-publishing. A proofer comes in after everything is done and it's been formatted, and they make sure that the manuscript that you provided the formatter meets the requirements of the genre, and that, because genres have specific formatting that's required. And so a nonfiction book will look drastically different than a romance book. And so sometimes you will find that books, especially the rank amateurs, but I have found it with some of the big publishers, they don't format, because you got the chapter should always be on the right side, but some don't do it. And there's, in some circumstances, it's okay with the genre. And so one of the things I always look at, if it's self-published, is on the right-hand side. because that is normally a sign of a rank amateur unless it's a genre that doesn't require it. And most people don't know that. They wouldn't know enough about it. So when I see that, I always look at it and go, okay, that's a dean. And especially when I'm judging books. We'll talk about book judging. That's something I do. Finally, I'm going to throw in some reading type of edits because this is really important that you need to know. And so there's a guy by the name of Robert May. Robert May is one I'm going to bring up now. That Robert L. May was a catalog writer for Montgomery Ward. So if you remember Montgomery Ward, what we used to jokingly refer to as Monkey Ward, he wrote the catalogs, and he had a bright idea to write a book about a children's book based on Christmas with a special reindeer. And we all know that book now is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And the reason why I bring him up is that he used a term that we know today called alpha readers. And his alpha reader, and he only had one, but his alpha reader was his daughter. She was the right age for the age group. And so whenever he wrote a chapter, he would read it to her at night, and he would ask her to let him know if there was a word that she did not understand. And if there was a word she didn't understand, he would dumb it down until where there was no issues with the words. And that alpha reading that she provided him allowed him to make one of the best-selling secular books in all U.S. history. And so I wanted to bring up alpha readers because alpha readers and beta readers should be who you're actually writing for, and those need to be your readers. So if you are writing a children's book and you got grandchildren, nieces, nephews, somebody of that age, use them as alpha readers. And their job may be, is there a word I do not understand? And if they don't understand that word, delete it out. Unless it's for the school system. And your marketing plan says, I have to have it in there because it's a sight word. So you can't delete out a sight word, but you might be able to delete out a word that is not a sight word. So you have to be very careful. This is very general that I'm talking about, and you have to use some thinking and logic. But alpha readers are a type of editor, but they're not editors, and you should never pay alpha readers or beta readers. But you should include them at least with a word of thanks in your book or a free book. That is the compensation we normally do. I will sometimes thank somebody in the dedication part of my book, and then I'll give them a free signed book. Unless they're overseas, then I'll send them an electronic copy, and I'll definitely make sure that their name is acknowledged in the acknowledgement section as thanking them for all their help. People don't know what they're doing. They just know I'm thanking them. Nobody really cares, but it matters, at least to me and to the people that took their time to read my book. So I use alpha readers sometimes. They're very hard to get because you have to have somebody that is going to be your targeted reader. And most people do not want to read chapter by chapter. If you can get it, do it. The next one is beta readers. And beta readers, it's now becoming a business. People beta read, and they charge. Do not pay somebody to beta read your book. They are not a profession. If they are charging you to read a book, you do not need them. You need somebody that's going to be reading your genre, that they're your targeted demographic. If they're not your targeted demographic, even if they're going to do it for free, they do not need to be your beta reader. So if you're going to be writing a children's book series that you're going to be selling in schools, your beta readers are going to be the teachers and admin people that's on your mailing list that you need to create up as a part of your marketing plan. And then, as one of the little things that you can do is say, if you want to get a sneak peek at my newest books, be a beta reader, send them an email, and if they bite, then you probably got a future buyer of the book because their name's going to be in it. Oh, thank you, Mrs. Whatever from this school. You've been a godsend. Just a nice little 1 or 2 sentence thank you dedication. They're probably going to invite you to their school to speak. You're going to get those speaker fees I talked about, and then you get to sell a case of books or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever. And that is marketing. Plus, you're also going to make sure that you're going to get the input that you need from a professional that's going to be buying. Like I said, I've got a book that I'm writing about sci-fi, so I'm looking for sci-fi readers for my beta reading. So right now it's going through the beta reading process. I'm getting my edits in soon. I will show that possibly later so that you can see how that works, how I do my beta readings. But that's something you need to know. But I just want to throw those in. They're not really edits, but that's almost in that field. That is what you need to use before editing. Now, if you're going to send beta reader copies out and you're a non-native English speaker, I strongly recommend that you get an native English edit done before you send out the beta reading copies. That is critical. You need to do that. So, but anyway, I thank you for listening. And as always, I recommend ways to purchase from people. So as always, I've got my friend Ricky Wallace. This is a knife that I always show. He makes a ton of knives. He does all sorts of stuff. Brilliant guy. Please, please, please buy from him. Toshana's Creations. That's my wife. As I mentioned before, she does fantastic t-shirts, pot holders, blankets, anything that can be imprinted upon, she imprints upon it. She does contracts for corporations and companies, churches, businesses. She can do that. I've had schools that they've reached out to her. She does those tumblers and mugs, and unlike others that it's that wonky, cumbersome, really not usable epoxy mess. And you may be making epoxy mess, and I'm sorry, but it's junk. I don't like it. And that's a personal opinion. I just don't like it. But what she does actually impregnates into it, so it's not a paint. It's not a vinyl like that cheap Cricut vinyl stuff that washes off. You can put this into the dishwasher, and so it won't break the bank, but it's high quality. So anybody that you give it to, they will be glad that they got it. They'll think that you spent a fortune on it when you really did. And so down below, I always put her link. I ask that you please buy from her. I've shown this one a time or two already. This right here is some ornaments that I do. They're feathers that I've painted on. That one was a dolphin. So I've got others that I can do. I can make up some if you want me to do one specially. Those are $15. And then I've got a ton of inventory left. And if you're interested, just hit me up and I can show them. This one right here is a belted kingfisher, which the belted kingfisher is the one native to Florida and most of the southern United States. So this is a big feather. Of course, it is. This one is a $250 feather that I normally sell, and because the art festivals and things of that nature are not back like they need to be, I am selling that for $100 just to get rid of my inventory and get some of my profits recouped. As always, buy my book. This is a quick guide to archetypes and allegory. Is available wherever fine books are sold. Also, you can get it at ebook lingo, and ebook lingo is ebooklingo.com. They have a deal that you will not be able to find anywhere else for my book. It's only 99 cents. So anywhere else it'll run anywhere from $2.99 to $4.99. You can get it for 99 cents for a limited time through ebook lingo. So with that, I thank you for watching. Always please comment, especially if you want to enter into the Cornhusk doll giveaway. You'll get both dolls, so I'm not going to do one of each like some people do. You will get a matching set. You'll get both dolls. That way I don't have dolls lying around the place, because I just did this for this show, so I think it's only fitting that I give it away to my readers, so you get a part of the show. And with that, please put your comment down below. Say, please enter me in this contest, and I'll enter you. And then the 21st, I said, that's when we'll do the drawing, and we'll go from there. So with that, thank you. Thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe. Have a good day.